Everybody, welcome back to Happily Never After. We're going to talk about special occasions. I know my daughter just had her 5th birthday, and I know it was Kim's birthday, which is so funny that those land on the same day.
Same day.
Like, how serendipitous is that? But it really triggered some thought in me about how we as widows and widowers resonate differently with those special holidays are extra triggering for me. And I'm sure that this past weekend wasn't, peaches and cream for you. Tell me your thoughts on that. How was this weekend for you?
I had to consciously tell myself, I know that it's going to happen. Kim literally started getting sick on Easter Day. The next day was in the hospital. 2 days after that, lapsed into a coma. A month and a half after that, passed. The craziest thing is, I know that these series of events, like her birth, the fact that her birthday is on Nora's birthday is just like, wow. Nora's celebrating her 5th. Kim would have celebrated her 52nd. It's just taking me some time to kind of get myself around this holiday period or this time period. It's been years. You tell yourself, this year's going to be different. And then when it comes, you automatically fold into certain things.
It's so weird because, one, the synchronicity of Kim's birthday and Nora's birthday falling on the exact same day is, the odds of that are, I'm not a math person, so I'm not even going to try to calculate.
Right.
But whoever's out there listening, please feel free to send me a message and let me know what those odds would be. But
Tell me
that's
too.
already a really cool thing. And then both Kim and Craig passed away within days of their birthdays. So Craig passed away the day before his birthday. And I don't even remember that day much. I really don't. It's such a blur to me. So during peak COVID stuff, which is when he died, and none of his stuff was COVID related, but the hospital, I could go visit him for an hour at a time. And then when he got transferred to the rehab, we had to schedule visits because of COVID. And the first time I could get in was 4 days after he transferred. My first visit with him would have been on his birthday. So he died with me not having seen him in 4 days. And so that was already taking a toll on me, and the whole just everything had come to a head, right? Similarly to you, where it was just okay, we're at this peak maximum raw nerve exposure. Later was Thanksgiving. So her stuff started on Easter. Our stuff ended with Thanksgiving, which is kind of wild that there's that synchronicity between you and I as well. And I just think about what that does for how we approach other holidays and special events. I talk to my mom, for example. She hates the month of January, even though her birthday's in January, because her grandmother passed away tragically in January. Her father passed away on New Year's Eve. It seems in my family, all of the deaths of important people are intrinsically tied on or very close to holidays. My grandmother passed away a week after Mother's Day, and her best friend passed away within days of Thanksgiving, and her father passed away on New Year's Eve, and Craig passed away right around his birthday, and Kim passed away around Easter. And so everybody I know, or all of the family members who died, are very closely tied to holidays. And it just really changes how we approach those days compared to the non-grievers or the people who haven't experienced it like that. You're bracing for impact with other holidays.
What's interesting is with other holidays, I'm actually looking forward to them because I know how I feel during that Easter period. Because Kim got sick on Easter and her illness lingered for over a month.
A long time.
It was literally a month and a half. I have gotten a new kind of talk about my mother-in-law, but I have a whole new sense of feeling for her because this month has got to be incredibly hard on her. Nobody should ever outlive their kids. It affects so many people in the family, and it affects them differently. For instance, her oldest daughter died in the summer. She's feeling this back to back. I can't even remember when her husband died, but obviously, you're dealing with 3 people, and then she had a boyfriend who unfortunately passed away. When you have something like this, it's hard for us as the spouses. But I'm looking at this thing now. In our conversation, I'm just looking at this part. We both got kids. Just to imagine what our in-laws are feeling. You know what I'm saying? It's a whole different kind of pain. Taking that, all that. Look, I still know what
I think
we
even
feel.
For like Kim's mom, like being a mom myself, and not to diminish being a father, but the biological bond that a mother has with her child, because she carried that person in her body. She grew that seed, for lack of a better word, to have that completely destroyed. That thought I have a hard time with it. I have to compartmentalize it because it starts to unravel me. And I was talking with someone the other day, and they had said something, and I almost got a little angry because they were like, oof, losing a spouse is hard, but oh God, no one losing a child. And I got angry inside. I didn't say anything, but I was like, what do you mean that's harder? It's apples to oranges, but we both live in the same produce department. Right. And I was like, losing a child is catastrophic, but it's not 50% of your income. It's not your support person, your co-parent, your lover, your friend, your partner in all things. It's not that. And I'm right about that, but also being a parent and having it be that biological umbilical cord, literal connection. It hurts me in a lot of physical spots now that I sit with that and think about it. And my heart goes out to Kim's mom. It hurts me on a cellular level. So,
Kate, let me tell you.
Changing subject.
You know what? Got to stay on this for a quick second. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I wrote an article, and the article was called Death and Ice Cream. Because one night I'm in my mother-in-law's house, and it's me and my oldest daughter, and we're all sitting there. And first we were just reminiscing about my wife. After a while, it ended up becoming a straight battle royale of who loved her the most. We're sitting there, and there's 3 different contentions. One, my mother-in-law. The other, my daughter. And then there's me. Now, I feel like the odd man out because there is no biological connection. I just met her. My mother-in-law had her,
Your daughter was born from her loins.
Right. And I'm sitting there, and at first I was so upset, feeling that my position wasn't being honored. But then I had to take a minute to just look at these realities.
It's interesting. So I've recently made friends with a lot of people of the Jewish faith, and I've been learning a lot about the reverence and the honoring that they have in the grief and bereavement sphere. And one of the things I've learned about is the process of Shiva. Shiva is the ceremonious mourning after a person dies. Right. And depending on how you practice and how orthodox or whatnot you are, depends on rules. But the most interesting piece about it is the rules in which you participate in Shiva are dependent on your relationship to the deceased. So the obligation of the spouse is not as intense as the relationship of the child. The child has more, I don't want to say privilege, but they're in the hierarchy of who gets to mourn harder, for lack of a better phrase. The child gets preferential mourning, and for anyone out there of the Jewish faith, if I am misunderstanding this, please correct me. But my understanding is that the child has a deeper obligation because of that biologic connection to the loss. And that also makes me think about special holidays. So Shiva in and of itself is almost like a special occasion for the loss, because you're supposed to mourn for a whole year when you're in Shiva. And then thinking about, Yom Kippur and all these other Jewish faith days that are based in that reverence, it changes how you observe them. And I love that. And I wish there was a way that we could parlay that depth of reverence for grief and loss to the rest of the world. It just makes me think, like, all the special holidays, they don't have to be big calendar days either, you know, like they don't have to be birthdays or Christmas or Easter or what have you. There are other days out there that are very triggering and really intense. And it's funny that we're talking about this because Craig was always a big fan of like obscure holidays. One of the things he used to do was send out a daily email and a weekly email and a monthly email about all the holidays that were happening. And they were National Chocolate Chip Cookie Day or IT Professionals Day or Nurses Week or Take Your Trash to the Dump Month. Or and I still have the emails, and I should really start circulating those again. But some really obscure things, like the day before our wedding is September 19th, and that's International Talk Like a Pirate Day. So our wedding rehearsal, he made everyone go through the wedding rehearsal talking like pirates. And I will never forget that. So while my wedding anniversary will always be hard, September 19th is equally as hard, where I feel like otherwise it wouldn't have been. Not that it wouldn't have been memorable or important, but it's a different type of resonation for me that's connected to a holiday.
Right.
So as the people out there listening, don't feel like they have to be these big, specific Hallmark greeting card, nationally recognized holiday. When we say special occasions and holidays, it's whatever that resonates for you, and whatever day on the calendar potentially triggers those feelings or those ruminations. When you are anticipating those holidays or those days in the year that may be challenging, how do you prepare for them? How do you get yourself through that day?
Try my best not to even think about it. Distraction for me is the best way to deal with knowing that these certain things will be absent of Kim.
Are you ever worried that could become avoidant behavior or like a deflection of the feelings, or do you allow yourself to lean into the feeling while you're being distracted?
It's an avoidant reaction. It's a distraction that I know that if I didn't have, I would be the person who was bringing down the family. There's nothing wrong with reminiscing about a time or a circumstance.
It becomes an honoring and nostalgic.
It really does.
In a way of like holding space.
It really does, because the choice is to wallow or figure out how to find a way to move forward.
There are days where like I have to give myself permission. Like our wedding anniversary is a day where I literally turn off my phone and I say, don't contact me. And I wrap myself in one of his old t-shirts and his favorite blanket, and I grief burrito, and I watch sad movies and force myself to cry, because that's just what feels right. Like our first wedding anniversary, I did a photo shoot where we got married. I dyed my wedding dress black, basically recreated some of our wedding photos to honor that space for that first wedding anniversary without him. And it's probably one of the favorite things I've ever done, because it was so cathartic. And I have a friend who took pictures of me while I was dyeing the dress, and there's this one picture of me like bawling, but that picture is so powerful and such a great illustration of that raw emotion. And I look at the picture sometimes because I need to remember how intense that feeling was, because we get numb to the grieving process, especially how it was in the early days. And the wedding anniversary for me is one of those days where I like to be reminded, this sounds a little sadistic, I like to be reminded of how much it hurt, because grief is just the leftover love we couldn't give.
Absolutely.
We couldn't give while they were alive. And so for me to remember the intensity of the pain is me to remember how much I love him and not get lost in the minutia of the day-to-day without him, or the grief or the bereavement or all of it. So for me to go back and look at those wedding pictures that I recreated, and then to look at our original wedding pictures, is a reminder of the intensity of that love. And like I said, it sounds a little sick.
Nah,
There's
man.
other days where it's like I need to go and do something fun. His birthday this year, we went to one of his favorite restaurants and we listened to his iPod, and it has a whole bunch of like silly Weird Al Yankovic songs on it, and we had a big jam dance party listening to his favorite silly songs. And it was just a day filled with laughter and joy in a way that when you have that intense grieving, you wouldn't expect to have such laughter and joy.
Right.
So for whatever the holiday is, just know that it can be both. It can be one, it can be the other, it can be neither. Just embracing what feels right for that day. And it can change from year to year. There have been birthdays of his where have been the grief burrito, and there have been wedding anniversaries. Like this past wedding anniversary was a little more joyful and a little less cry fest. And it's going to ebb and flow and evolve over time. And you don't have to like stack the coins so high and put so much pressure on yourself to either have reverence for the holiday or avoid the holiday.
And that's one thing.
Pressure on yourself. I learned that the hard way.
That's one thing that I would definitely let people know. To feel the holiday, the time period, the way you would feel it. Don't anticipate the way someone else would feel the circumstance. Obviously, if
you won't know what's right for you until you go through it.
If it's your children, that's kind of a different situation. Have that conversation with them, but also understand that this is private amongst you and your spouse has passed away. That's something that nobody else could understand. Friends, family members, everybody has their own thought process of the time period. A lot of Kim's friends will probably reminisce it over her birthday with my mother-in-law and all that stuff. And my whole thing is, the way I do it is between me and really Kim. And that's it. I just want to make sure that the audience understands, when you lose your spouse, these times are like Kate, like you just said, they're going to ebb and flow. Some days, some of those holidays, they're going to be just awesome because you're looking at the memory of the situation of their life or your time with them in a certain way. Some of them are going to just feel, like you said, what you said, the grief burrito. And it's
grief burrito, like literally wrap yourself in a little blanket, and,
and that's it. I mean,
a little sad grief burrito.
In either way, is not a bad thing. Don't feel that just because someone says you should feel this way, you should feel that way. No, it's based off the way you decide to feel.
And it's gonna vary from year to year, person to person, whether it's getting together in solidarity with family and having something as a honoring celebration type situation, or whether it's isolating and taking time to do some self-care. And even if you make plans, like having an exit strategy, having that person, that grief captain that you can call and say, I have chosen poorly, help me get out.
That is so important.
Having that exit strategy, or that person who knows what's going on, to have them check in on you, whether it's a text or to just be there if you need a lifeline or phone a friend. That's probably one of the things I had to learn the hardest too, was I tried to shut everyone out, and then I ended up wallowing for 3 days longer than I probably should have. So it's okay to wallow, but monitor that and make sure it doesn't go the other way. It can be a slippery slope where you end up in a depressive state. Try not to self-medicate. Try not to, do counterproductive things. Do self-care, take time, take space, but don't hurt yourself unnecessarily.
I do give myself a certain time frame. Again, that's mostly with the major holidays. I know I'm going to block it out because that's what I do. But I want to give myself certain time frames to say, you know what? I know that it's going to happen right around here. Make sure that I'm not in that whole mood. Like when I'm talking with the girls and I'm going through some things, they know. Don't bring up some things. I'm pretty blessed because they know what triggers. But like I said, for the most part, I block off that time because I know what it's going to be. I'll tell myself, it's something else I got to do. There's something else I have to handle. It's like...
Well, we were talking about that the other day where you were saying, I know you were having a pretty hard day. We were supposed to record the other day, and it was that 0 day versus that, forget it day. Right. And I was trying to convince you to it's okay to do absolutely nothing. And it's all right to completely unplug and have a grief burrito day. And you were steadfast in saying that you weren't going to have a 0 day. And I admire that about you. I don't always have that capacity, but I love that philosophy in application with grief related to the holidays. How do we at least accomplish one thing? If you can't clean the whole room, clean a corner.
Right. That's it.
Make the bed, wash one dish, and, whatever it is that gives you that sense of, I may have had a bad day or a tough day or a really hard grief day, but at least I picked the socks up off the floor, opened the curtains. You did one thing where it's not a 0 day, and that means you're still taking steps forward. It's that forward momentum. It doesn't have to be anything monumentous. You don't have to go to IKEA and then build furniture all day long. Grocery shopping or repaint the garage. It doesn't have to be something huge. It can be literally, I read one email. I put the dishes away. I shut the closet door. As big or as small as you can handle. And then if you get into it and it's too much, it's okay to stop.
Yes.
Don't feel obligated to finish, to push yourself if it's going to be detrimental. Because even doing part of it or half of it is still better than doing nothing at all. That forward momentum.
Really, what it's more about committing to the action, not completing the action. Completing the action, hey, that's a bonus. But committing to the action, hey, I'm going to do this. That is I'm not going to allow my feelings of loss to prevent me from doing something to move forward. An FU day is just that. As long as you do 1, maybe 2 small things, like you said.
Writing the to-do list for tomorrow.
Right.
That's a thing.
That's it. It's like...
And at the end of the day, if you get to the end of the day and it turned out to be an FU day, give yourself some grace and patience because you went into it with the right mindset.
Yes.
That's that alchemy, that tending to something. They say grief is better healed when you tend to something. Well, sometimes that something has to be yourself. That grief processing, especially around special occasions, has to be a little bit of kindness and gentleness. Treat yourself the way you would treat your best friend if they were going through this.
And honestly, that's kind of something I would recommend is, on those days, make it a spa day. Make it a day where you do you, and don't feel bad about it.
Hydrate, track your steps for the day.
Right.
That counts as doing something, and it is also to your betterment. And then knowing if you don't bounce back as quickly as you'd like to, or you don't accomplish the things, to reach out, as hard as that is.
Yes.
Don't let it make you move backwards. Because the real secret to handling grief is knowing when to outsource for help and knowing that you're not alone and finding that strength and resilience to find your community. And I'm just so honored to be a part of your community and to know, we had that day where neither one of us were doing well. And I've certainly had days where I've pushed our recordings or been like, nah, man, not today. I can't. And find your tribe. It's easier said than done, but they're out there. I promise you.
Well, you know what, Kate, listen, this was an awesome, this was an off-the-cuff conversation. And it was solely because of the fact that we were talking. I texted you. I was like, oh, my God, Noah's birthday is on Kim's birthday. And that's when we came up with the idea of the conversation. I'm sure the audience is probably hearing the fact that, look, this is just an unscripted, it's 2 people talking about how they feeling. I was just thinking about this real quick. I was like, as I was reminiscing over my loss of Kim, what was crazy for you was the fact that I know that Craig would have just had a ball on Nora's birthday.
It's also not lost on me that it's the end and the beginning of a cycle, the alpha, the omega. Right. It's for the loss to be that day, but also Kim's birthday, and then the growth potential for Nora, it feels like the other end of the spectrum. And you're right. I think about how Craig would have been and how much he's missed in the last 3 years. She was 19 months old when he died, and for her to be turning 5 or turned 5, I'm like beside myself with that. And look at who she is and how she is and how much of him she has in her. She is a pistol. She's way too smart for her own good and for my own good. And he would be absolutely tickled pink with the person that she is and who she's becoming, and I would be in so much trouble with the two of them in cahoots together. So it's probably for my better that he's not here for this.
Hey.
It's she has this really adorable little nefarious laugh, and I'm just like, oh geez, he would totally play into that. It is wild to watch her grow and develop and know that he's missing that and that she's missing that. But I have to take a step back and know that will give her a different type of strength and tenacity that she wouldn't have otherwise. And it makes me a better parent in a really messed up kind of way, because I have to hold that space for that relationship and get uncomfortable with it, and get comfortable with it, I should say. But I digress. I could do this all day.
Kate.
We're just about out of time. So I just want to, thank you for sharing and pushing through the hard holidays to be able to share your experiences with our listeners. And I want to thank our listeners for continuing to hold space for us and to hear what we have to say. I'm absolutely honored to be able to share this perspective with the world and with you, Jay. So
appreciate it.
Okay.
I just wanted to,
conversation.
Before I go, I just wanted to let the audience know, give yourself the opportunity, manage your circumstance by moving forward. The people that you lost will respect that. I mean, I don't even know if I'm saying it right, but I just feel that in my heart. I really do. But needless to say,
I know what you mean.
Kate, look, I'm going to talk to you later.
Until next time, we will catch everybody later. This was another phenomenal conversation, and I'm really excited to share it with everyone. Make sure you head on over to your favorite streaming platform and check out our past episodes, and stay tuned for future episodes. Until next time, Jay, thanks for tuning in.
All right. Y'all have a good one, okay?
You've been listening to Happily Never After, part of the Xvadio podcast network. You can catch every episode of Happily Never After, as well as the rest of the network, at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.